Welcome back on the Leaders Who Care 135th episode. Today we have the privilege to welcome someone really special here that I have the privilege, and thank you so much for joining us today, Tonillie Miller. Really honored to have you. Thank you so much for being with us today. As you know, we're on a mission to bring together some of the most caring leaders from every corner of the world. Anthony, you've been a management consultant for many years, helping industrial organization, executive coach, and with more than 15 years of track record of driving performance transformation in the organization and really making a positive difference to people's life. I would love to hear more about your journey and what you've done. But first of all, thank you so much for making the time today.
Thank you for having me. I've been excited about this.
Well, first of all, I'm very close to what you do in terms of helping organizations, helping leaders, and I'm curious really to know what inspired you to do what you do today. How did you really decide to get into that management consultancy advisory at the highest level?
Yeah. Well, I've actually been really deliberate about my career. I mean, I didn't wake up, as a young child and say, "Oh, I know I'm going to be a doctor." It wasn't like that. But it basically, by the time I got to the end of college, I pretty much knew that psychology was going to be my thing. And just intuitively, I got it, intellectually, all of it. And I just loved it so much. It just came naturally. And so I started my career as a health and well-being, like an employee well-being and employee productivity researcher in an organization. And that just opened the door for me because I started to see there as a researcher, crunching all the numbers and seeing what happens when you pull this lever or when you make sure people have a great experience at work and when there's healthy options and the focus of the organization is on the employee well-being. You see all the other wonderful metrics go up, like productivity and engagement and all those things. And so that was kind of my foray into it. And I just thought, oh, this is amazing. It's like the secret sauce. This is how we're going to do it. And so from there, I really spent a lot of time kind of picking up some of the other pieces of that puzzle. So I went on to do employee engagement consulting to understand a little bit more about that piece of it too and how we make that happen. I went on and did some more change management consulting, and that really, I've spent the majority of my career really, really honing in on that because I found that basically everything that you want to accomplish in an organization from a business strategy point of view, you have to operationalize it through your people, right? And through your culture and your employee experience and all kinds of other things that I'm sure we'll talk about. But basically, as I went along this journey, I started picking up all those pieces and seeing like all the different levers in the organization that you can be pulling in order to get the most productive, the most engaged, the most excited employees and highest performance as well. And so that just really has lit me on fire, for the last like over a decade, like we said. And now, I do that same work, and it's really at that intersection of transformation and change as well as that employee experience.
I love that. And since we a topic we're deeply passionate about, which is helping employees to thrive at work, not survive. And you talk a lot about unlocking employee thriving as your competitive edge. Um, Tell us more about this. Could any organization do this? How impactful is this for standing out amongst really because a lot of companies want to achieve that, but it's not easy, especially the larger corporates, the companies that are in thousands or tens of thousands of employees. It's it's a big undertaking, and we've seen a lot of issues with during COVID, and still today, anxiety. This is a major, major issue I see not only in US, all over the world. So yeah, tell us more about us, if any, because our audience is CEOs, but also future leaders. What would be your advice towards them? How could they do that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing is over the years, I've seen so many ways that they can do this. And what I've also found is most of these things cost little or nothing. So it's not even like it's a big expense because companies spend a ton of money on different technology and different well-being apps and all these things that are things, but they don't get at the root causes that make people unproductive, that make people disengage and leave and that type of thing. And so what I've done in my new book actually is really break it down very simply of like, kind of like bucketing it into three buckets of things that organizations can do. And the first thing would be removing friction, right? So if you think about like the key tenets of behavioral economics and persuasion psychology, what the key tenets of them is to make things as simple as possible for people to do what you want them to do. So that means if you want people to be performing at high levels and be productive and engaged, you have to make that as easy as possible. And unfortunately, most organizations don't operate from that place. They actually end up creating work experiences that hinder and disengage and fail to unlock their people because there's all kinds of friction. And again, I'm happy to dive into any of these that I'm describing in more detail if you'd like. But besides removing friction, the second piece is you can minimize the ways that the organization frustrates employees' human needs. And so if you think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or if you think about self-determination theory, which is that Daniel Pink's book Drive talks about this, where the different needs that humans have if they want to be motivated, engaged, and all those great things we're looking for. So if you look at that, a lot of the ways that companies operate, and they're not trying to do it, but they do inadvertently, they actually frustrate those human needs for things like autonomy and mastery and ownership and certainty and those types of things. So I would do those two things, right? So I kind of think of it as like a building, like a maturity model. So first, get rid of all the friction, right? All kinds of things like extra meetings and all the clunky technology and all kinds of things like that. We need to get rid of that first. That's a baseline. And then you move on and you stop hindering their human needs where you can. And then the third level, and this is like the most ambitious organizations, and it's a very few, would be to actually start meeting some of those human needs that we're talking about. So I'll pause there, but that's kind of the way that I frame it up for people to think about like what they can kind of do to get started.
Well, how do you approach this when it's a much larger organization? So, and talking in tens of thousands of people.
Yeah. Well, and again, and it depends, right? So it's one thing because typically when I get called in as a consultant or a coach, it's one department or one leadership group or that type of thing where it's like, okay, so the C level says, oh, we want our people to be engaged, or we want to attack our we want to not attack, but we want to make sure we increase our retention and things like that. So what I do is I kind of go through this diagnostic, and what it would be is literally going through all these sources of friction and kind of finding out where they are. So again, some of the things I mentioned, clunky technology, all those other things we talked about, finding out what those are. So again, I could come in and do this, or if it was like an HR leader in an organization or a manager in an organization, just start thinking about what all these sources of friction are and just see where you can minimize them and get rid of them, right? And then the second piece, like I said, on top of that is if we go through all the different human needs, and just find out like where does the organization frustrate some of these things, right? And again, a good place to start is my book. I hate to keep hyping it up, but basically it explains everything to you super simply. So if you don't have a background in psychology, if you don't have a background in these things that I have a background in, you can just literally open it up and be like, okay, this is what I need to do. Yep, we have that problem. Yep, we've got a culture problem. You can kind of diagnose these things yourself then. And then again, of course, actually try to meet some of those human needs on top of it.
Just to summarize some of those human needs, because I know that and I'm very much aligned with this, because often cultures are not built around meeting the human needs of the employees. Like the
Yeah.
first, what I understand is the sense of security. Like you need to have from the ancient times, you need to before you're going to sleep, somebody's on a watch guard in case a lion comes over and eat you. It's just as simple as like a basic human need, right? So we need that sense of security, not to know you're going to get fired or the company is going out of business. But then at the same time, they also need variety and dynamism. So you need security, like more of a baseline, but you also need to mix this up. And I know the other one is very important is to have the recognition and really appreciation of the work you do. Otherwise, people feel disengaged and just underappreciated. And the fourth is love and care. Like really accept people for who they are with their strengths and weaknesses. And I think five and six, from what I recall from my own understanding, is growth. People do like to grow. If
Hmm.
they grow, they feel they develop. They really alive. They feel like there's a lot of energy. And the sixth one is giving. We start giving, meaning you're part of a greater purpose, greater way. So yeah, that's how I look at. I don't know what your really what kind of thoughts are on this, and I'm sure you have your more comprehensive version of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yes, you hit on so many of them. And there's a couple more actually that I call out too, just after kind of like thinking through this and doing this work. And one is, I would say, just holistic well being. So if you think about a lot of jobs, if you're not a typical office worker, for example, you're sitting all day, you're really stressed out, you're probably shoveling your lunch in your mouth at your desk, you're not really
Yeah.
going on walks. The average person isn't. Lots of stress. Maybe you can't shut off. You're, answering emails. Maybe there's a lack of psychological safety. That's actually very common. So those are the well-being needs that get stifled very easily and even inadvertently. So those are some of those pieces. And then again, to your point, the love piece, there's connection and belonging, right? So there's all kinds of ways you can do this. Even, if you're in a remote or a hybrid culture, you can definitely, there's so many great practices you can do because connection and belonging doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the same physical location, right? Because a lot of people think of it as, oh, well, I'm lonely if I'm not with people, but it's actually, you could be in a room of people. And if you don't feel like you belong there, you're going to be lonely as well. So I really kind of coach leaders and help them understand that it's not physically having people in the office necessarily. Not saying it's bad to be in the office, but it's not going to necessarily make magic happen. And so you have to be very deliberate about whether it's in office or it's remote, cultivating these sources of connection and belonging. And again, that psychological safety is kind of the gateway into that. And then just there's lots of different things you can do so to make people feel kind of like, whether you have ERGs or other different groups that share interests together. So they're kind of feeling like they're part of the same team. And then to your piece about the growth and actualizing potential, I mean, that is so important. I think it's the number one value of Gen Z and millennials is growing. And there's so many studies and there's so much data out there that majority of these people feel like the only way that they can actually grow and actualize and develop is to leave their company and go somewhere else, which is really terrible. Because there's so many different ways the organization for no low cost options can develop people, actualize people. And also while they're doing that, the people are actually going to be adding more bandwidth and probably taking on more projects and productivity. And so like there's some examples I can give if you'd like, but there's a lot of companies
Please,
that,
yeah.
do things like internal marketplaces, reverse mentoring, cross mentoring, job crafting, all kinds of different things that again don't cost anything, very simple, but people aren't doing it. And so then the other two needs that I really like to highlight is providing autonomy and agency because these are adults. So we don't want to be stifling people's autonomy or their ability to take action or feel like they have some control over their life. And so that's why one of the biggest reasons why when these CEOs demand people and mandate them come back to office, it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to try this and whatever, but the mandate itself causes something psychologically called reactance, and that removes their autonomy, and it's all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of different downstream effects that are terrible. So the autonomy one is huge. And then the final one that I love, it's my main focus, I think, in my work is the meaning and purpose piece, because everybody wants meaning and purpose in work and in life. And there's less and less ways that they're finding it these days. And so people are like starving for it. And so one of the things that I love, David Burkus is actually a psychologist in this space, and he has this term called interdependence. And it's like something so simple that you can do with your team is just like, connecting the dots for them, right? So it's not that we're working, it's not that we're not doing as much work or we're doing different work. It's literally how leaders position the work. So showing Joe how his spreadsheet connects to this team over here and how that impacted the client, or showing, Jane, like how what she's doing, connecting those dots so she can see how that impacts the broader organizational strategy and that type of thing. So it's just simple things like that. But it's like, these are things that organizations can be doing, and it would really increase productivity, engagement, and hopefully retention.
Well, that's very helpful, and it sounds so common sense and so simple, but
It is.
it's often really yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we talk a lot about that care is not a weakness, and we seen data and statistics and continuously over many years of working with some of the greatest leaders out there that leaders who care outperform the one who doesn't, and care is not a weakness. Um, but in fact, it can be really, if you think about it, can be a catalyst to driving performance. Um, what are your thoughts on this? How would you comment really the for the skeptics to say, yeah, this care thing, it's what are the boundaries? And because for me, care is speaking the truth when people are underperforming, just finding out what's going on with them and just really to see whether you can help or not. It doesn't mean you have to just be silent and don't speak anything just because you want to be kind. That's why I distinguish, with the care is you can still be kind, but you can speak the truth and really um, make a difference to the organization. So this is where the fine balance is, and of course, there's a lot of leaders who don't know how to manage, well, that targets, because the CEOs or leaders have a very often very difficult roles to this pressure from everywhere, from the employees, from the shareholders, from the unions, from the suppliers. Everybody wants more from them.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you what is your take on this, on the impact of care and caring leaders versus the how does it impact the performance? How does it impact the long-term culture and results?
Oh, it's the biggest factor. I mean, if you think about culture and or just if you're a manager and
Yeah.
you have your employees and you want to keep them engaged and productive and staying with you, it's a make or break. I mean, there's so much data out there that shows you the stats around like the impact, like financially and other metrics around leaders who are perceived as caring about their people. So when their people perceive that their leader cares about them and actually thinks of them as a human being, not a resource or a machine or something like that, it's just immeasurable. There's so much of that. But I think a couple things I would call out here, and I think one of them is, you know, whether we like it or not, we are very much in a new time right now. Like this is very much a new era. This is like the leader of the past just doesn't work anymore for a variety of reasons. So the leader of the past basically had all the information at the top of the food chain and had all the access, had to make all the decisions. And they usually were the most expert in whatever, industry they're in. And that's how they got there, right? They probably stayed in the company a long time. They got promoted over and over. Now they're the leader or something along those lines. And so they really were that expert. They had all the answers. But now for the most part, like the CEO does not know how to code. The CEO does not know how to build software and do all the things that their people are doing. And so now the leader that's required for today, plus there's it's just such a different world and everything's so much more democratized, like information and everything else. And so the leader of today is really that one who should be a coach. Even the CEO, it should really be thought of as more of that coach, that orchestrator of the excellence of others. So moving obstacles out of the way. And this is where the caring piece comes in, because at the end of the day, the leader of today, it's about getting work done with and through people, not you doing it on your own or you telling them what to do. And so if you want humans, if you want them to want to do the work really great and you want them to be high performers and you want them to stay and all those great things we're chasing, you need to treat the humans like a human, right? It seems simple, but it's not common practice all the time. And so with that, I guess I just think of it as it's literally how you lead. You're not really doing anything that different. You're still a CEO. You're still, making the board happy. You're still doing the things you do, but it's more about how you do it. So it's like how you're being, how you're communicating with people. And so with that, I mean, I always just coach leaders, and there's a lot of things you can be doing today, but again, kind of like being that, what I would say, a recognition dealer and a meaning maker. So some of those things are like, again, recognizing people, telling stories about how great Joe did over here on this project at the town hall so everybody can see it. I mean, these things cost nothing, but they make a huge impact, and that ramps up motivation and the desire to go above and beyond as an employee so much when you feel like the people actually care about you. And the other thing too is just like a simple practice that might get a leader started is I did this in any role where I'm leading a team or leading any people. My number one conversation with them is let's sit down and talk about where you want to grow, where you want to develop, like what you see as your strengths, what you want to make better, where you're not so good in your perspective, and kind of really making the focus on the people, not on me and what I have to tell them what to do and all that. So leaders can really it's really simple. Just have the conversation, find out these things about your people, because then as assignments and different projects come up, it's always in the back of your mind. Like you're always thinking, okay, I know that this person wants to stretch in this area. This thing just came up, let's connect them. And so really, really focusing on people and showing you care. It's not fluffy, it's showing you care through developing them and asking maybe, again, each leader's different. Like some leaders are not comfortable being vulnerable. Some are. I would say if you can find some level of vulnerability, even if it's something as simple as, oh, I don't know how to use AI. Can you help me? Like, I mean, even something as simple as that. It doesn't have to be fluffy. It doesn't have to be emotional if you're not comfortable with that. But showing vulnerability, showing you care in those ways, I think are a really good way to get started.
That's very helpful. I love what you say, recognition dealer. And
Mm-hmm.
that was very nice
Yeah.
tagline. What else? What the other phrase that you mentioned? So recognition
And a meaning
dealer,
maker. Yep. So one of your jobs as
meaning.
a leader is making meaning for your people. So connecting those dots that we
Yeah,
said and showing them how their work impacts so and so and how,
love
whatever they do. Again, I go back to spreadsheets because it's like this the most mundane thing ever. And everyone thinks, how could your job be meaningful if if you're in spreadsheets all day? But even that, I mean, I've seen great leaders where they're like, hey, the way that you did that spreadsheet and the way that you check it over, 4 times and did the quality assurance and all of that, and just simple stuff, but it's basically languaging. I see you, you matter, I appreciate you, that kind of thing.
Wonderful. Oh, this is great. And well, these days we see a lot of cultural tricks, or for example, free beer pong, Fridays, or what makes a good organizational culture? What do people really care about it when it comes down to work benefits or work perks? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, in the culture, I write and speak so much about culture because I think it's just one of the most misunderstood yet most strategic levers you could possibly pull. So the way that I think about culture is, I always tell leaders, like, it's literally, you would want to reverse engineer your culture to deliver the business strategy through your people, right? So if you think about like whatever you're trying to accomplish in the business, and it's like, let's say we want to be more innovative, for example. Well, you reverse engineer your culture so that everybody's behaving more innovative and in ways that would actually drive innovation, right? And so I think a culture is a very strategic lever in that way. I don't think of it as Taco Tuesdays, foosball tables, well-being apps. Those are like little band-aids. They're cosmetic things, and they may make a little mini bump in engagement for like an hour, but it's not going to actually solve any root causes. It's not going to stop toxic cultures from existing. That's not going to do any of that. And so I think leaders need to really be thinking about culture much more strategically in that way, so that, like I said, they're reverse engineering it. And the way that you kind of operationalize it, because again, some people think it's very fluffy, it's literally how people treat each other throughout their day, right? You could be remote, you could be in the office, you could be on a train sending an email, you could be anywhere at a client site, and you're still demonstrating the culture. So it's the idea of, if we work backwards and say, okay, so if we want innovation to be one of our strategic priorities this year, how do we get people to do that? We operationalize it by basically working with, a cross section of employees if possible, and basically understanding for each level of the organization, right? If you're an associate, you're a frontline worker, you're a manager, you're whatever you are, understanding for each of those different roles or levels, what a couple of really concrete, even perhaps measurable behaviors would be that would demonstrate innovation. And that's how you start getting it really grounded and granular, and people understand, oh, okay, I know that if I'm going to contribute to our strategic priority of, driving more innovation, these are the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 behaviors that I can do. I can demonstrate. I will be measured on them in my performance review. People will hold each other accountable for doing that. And then there's all kinds of different levers in the organization that we can actually use to reinforce those things. So I'm going to stop there. But like, I just see culture as a way more strategic tool than what most people think of it as.
To be honest, I love that, because often we as a and Dynamis here, what we do is also looking at how can we turn a vision into a talent strategy. So in other words, um, uh, who has done what you're looking to do, and how can you develop those relationships with people before you need them almost. So it's like, how do you know you have the right relationships for your vision, for your goal? Um, and often they don't, because they're busy with running a business, and they have a relationship, but they not represent necessarily the best practice or the very best in a given field. And if you're looking to become more sustainable business in your space, or reach a 10 billion goal, or whatever that may be, someone's done it before, very likely. So then it's finding out who actually has done this and who are the people behind it. But then we can help with attraction, but what you're talking about is the other piece. You can help with the retention. And this is where I see it's like a complementary, the hand and the glove, because you need both. You could develop it, but sometimes you need a very quick jump start, and bringing fresh blood into the organization, really role models, people who has done, and they can train the others. But yeah, I really like what you just said. What is the goal of the company, and what kind of culture we need to achieve it. So that's another way of really looking at it, especially in innovation. And I've noticed when people react, for me, it's very important how they react when there's a problem. But if they shout when there's a problem, that kills innovations. So
Yeah.
I've seen like, why? Because if you want to kill innovations, just start shouting on them, because people basically think, well, it was a problem. I tried to experiment, tried to do something innovative, but it didn't work out. And then the second thought is, why should I do this again? I don't want to be put into an uncomfortable position, and everything will get escalated to the leader, which means people will take less initiative, and therefore
Yep.
immediately affects your innovation, and there, and you create a bottleneck. So and that's very not easy to repair. You need a lot of good behavior, let's say, examples for many months or year plus to people to start again seeing that actually, hey, that this is changing or this is different. No, really like what you just said. What are we looking to achieve, and how our culture can help us, or how can we develop, evolve our culture's organization to help us achieve what we're looking for, which comes to the why we want to do that, and then if we have the
Yep.
vision, it will help into another interesting thing. You're an AI advisor as well, and when it comes down to authentic care, AI can seem daunting. Could be perceived as taking human jobs and losing their. Sometimes it could be too machinery, too automated, right? May miss the human feelings. What is can leaders still really have both? Really that use the authentic approach to care and really sincerely care, but also um, you deploy, heavily use the AI tools to advance, to develop.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is I think people, when we hear these conversations, it tends to be a black or white, either or thinking. And I'm very much a gray space, win, win, win kind of thinker. And so I always, again, you'll see this in my book, you see it in probably a lot of my comments. It's not about, oh, can I be caring or can I get the work done? No, we can do both. And in fact, when you focus on the how you do it, which would be the caring part, it actually gives a better result and it makes the work better and it makes it, faster, more productive, all those things you're looking for. So you got to, so it sounds counterintuitive, but yes. And I would say specifically with AI, I think, yes, let's automate all the mundane, boring spreadsheets and things that people hate doing anyways as human beings. And they shouldn't have been doing, but we didn't have the technology previously, but now we do. Definitely automate it, definitely use AI, bring it in. But I think the distinction is how we work with it, right? So how is it programmed? Who's training those models? Is there bias included or not? So really, I think doubling down on bringing the caring into how we implement it, how we use it, how we leverage it. And then basically, whether you're a manager or an individual contributor or whoever you are, once a lot of your tasks go away to be automated, then we get to elevate you and you get to do the more strategic, more human, more impactful, I think, meaningful work. And so I think you can absolutely do caring and AI together.
I also believe that you need even more caring leaders with the era of AI, because people would want more really personal connection, and since the AI can do a lot of those mundane tasks, it'll be even more important to take care of really recognizing people and really attending more to them, really sincerely appreciate that. I also believe you need that multidisciplinary knowledge with the rise of AI, because you need to connect many different areas and subjects. And I think, it's very interesting. And so I'm glad that you also see this way, and encourage more leaders if anything, leaders who care will be much more effective and will have on-tail win with AI. That's what I see. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just even ever more important. I really appreciate in the book you've written, The Flourishing Effect, and it outlines the various strategies for organizations to create thriving ecosystems. So we also hear in your next book that you're focusing on more an individual holistic side of it. Well, do you think both sides are really heavily connected? Um, what are your thoughts on this?
When you say both sides, do you mean the organizational level and the individual level?
Absolutely.
Yes, 1,000%. I think, for me, the first book was from the organizational level because it was basically targeted towards leaders, managers, HR professionals, because I figured that after me seeing all these issues in these organizations and me doing this work over the years, what I realized is that an individual person, like a single individual contributor, it's really hard for them to get a lot of this stuff done in a company, right? You really do need like consultants, leaders, managers, all the different levers in the organization really need to work as a system. And so you really need those folks at the top, those folks that can actually get the stuff done to, for the individual person to flourish. So that's why I did that book. But then again, as I went through this journey, I was also thinking, okay, now we need to think about what the individual, not just at work, but this second book is much more broad in the sense of it's what each individual, all of us can do. And some of it's about work, but not a lot. I mean, it's more focused on, with all the different changes that have happened that were leading up to the pandemic, but especially now post-pandemic, and just the way that just the world has changed a lot. And so I really wanted to address kind of that pain of there's so much existential angst and just unhappiness and unhealthiness. I mean, I think it's 80% of the US is obese, like just all these things that are really not enabling individuals to thrive in our world today. I wanted to attack that basically and just understand like what do we need to be doing and what needs to happen in this new world going forward so that we can as individuals thrive and flourish in this world. And so it's really been a fun journey. I've just started it. I'm probably about halfway through it at this point in time, but it's getting really exciting. So I'm excited to see kind of how it I guess how it ends up, because it's kind of been this interesting thing where I have so many thoughts on it. I've done a lot of research on it, but I'm also kind of letting it come through me. So kind of like seeing what makes sense and letting it simmer and that sort of thing. So it's really been kind of a co-creative journey.
We're looking forward to the launch of it. And um, in how do you take care of yourself, Tonille? It's important that you give a lot, but how do you fill your cup?
Yeah, and I love that you asked this question because I don't think that we talk about this enough, especially women don't talk about this enough. I am one of those people that is unapologetically putting my own airline or airplane mask on first, if that makes sense, that whole filling your own cup. I do that first, unapologetically. I don't care because I do know, and I've seen it either in myself or in others, that when we don't do that first, when we do everyone else and we're busy, 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 stress, 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 do all the time, our cup is empty, as you mentioned, and then we can't help anyone else. And because my work and my life is so other focused, I want my whole, like most of my meaning really does come from serving others, from doing this work that we do, from being really focused on others. So I know that in order to serve them to the best of my ability, I have to have my cup full first. So I do a lot of things. I do a lot of biohacking. So I do like intermittent fasting. I do sauna. I do cold therapy. I do a workout every day. I do a lot of things that feed my soul, like painting and dancing and being in nature and just being with people I love. And I just kind of think of it as a very holistic well-being practice for me. And that's what fills my cup up so then I can go and deliver for other people.
That's wonderful. How is your morning routine look like? What do you do when you wake up? What time do you wake up? Just take us to that.
Yeah, I love these questions. This is so fun. I have really honed it over the years because, again, I started my career in the health and well-being space. So I got a really close look very early on at what we eat and our movement and how we think and all those things and how that impacts us inside, out, down, and all around. And so my morning routine, I tend to get up pretty early. I go to bed early. I'm very focused on sleep. I try for at least like 9 hours of sleep a night. And it's not perfect, but I really do focus on that first because I think it's the foundation. So doing that, getting up early, I work out outside every day now. I was in a gym before the pandemic, but now it's every day outside and it's so lovely, rain or shine, I don't care. I do that, have a green juice. I do the sauna, do some deep work typically in the morning because I just think can function much better early in the morning. And I think that's it, actually. So it's not really crazy, but it's just a lot of different things. And then I incorporate a lot of things throughout my day just so that, like walks, lots of walks, lots of kind of taking a few minutes to sit down. And I don't meditate, but I like to kind of have a few minutes of stillness anyways. So that's typically what I do.
And what time do you wake up? You said very early. What is early for you?
So I used to be one of those people that got up at like 5 in the morning, just because I was typically in an office. Like I'm talking years
Yeah.
ago before the pandemic. If you had to be in the office by 9, you kind of have to get up at like 4:30 or 5 to get a workout and all the stuff in. Now I've been working, from home for almost a decade on and off. And so for the most part, it depends. I mean, lately it kind of depends. So like if I know that I don't have anything early in the morning, sometimes it does end up being 8 a.m. when I get up. Not often, but sometimes, but it tends to be somewhere in that like 6 o'clock range usually. So are you an early bird as well
Wonderful.
or no?
Yeah, I wake up very early normally, about before 5 o'clock typically. So for
Nice.
me, and just listening to what you're saying is so important. Yeah, it's not easy, especially when you try to get enough sleep, because sometimes you have extended days, and this is where you gotta catch up with sleep. But no, the body naturally tells you what to do. But I relate a lot to the workout. What you're talking about is so important, because you just gotta move your body. And there's a saying: whatever you don't use, you lose. So
Mhm.
it's important to use your muscles, your strength. Um, and I'm very curious about the biohacking and the food. Being blessed to eat great food from early days. So that I can see that makes such a difference. I always have like a saying: if you if the food you eat makes you sleepy, then it's probably you've eaten something that is not always the best for you. So if you the food should energize you.
Yep.
That's really the effect of food, and that's very much individual to every one of us. It's not always possible, but and there's a few things you can do before meal. You could do like run out of breath, maybe for 60 seconds. I like a quicker sprint, which will or really some jump squats, because if you do that, normally the glycose spike level will actually won't go really high. It will go already much more balanced. So you can have that meal, which should be a larger meal, but you've already primed the body. And ideally, there's a reason why people eat salad first, because when you eat a salad, that protects the greenery, protects your organs, again from that glucose spike, because the glucose spike makes your body age faster, and
Yes.
therefore the organs get age faster. So those two in combination, you can do a little bit of a really apple cider vinegar
I was just going to say
before
that.
that.
Yep.
Just a few things like that. It's not easy, not tasty, but anyway, it's an option for you to do, right? And then you can have a main meal, and if you're gonna have a dessert, have it after a main course.
Hmm.
And then you've got actually 90 minutes to burn this out, so you can have a great dessert, or not skip the. But technically, you have another 90 minutes if you go for a walk, or just do a little bit of movement. That will naturally take care of that spike potentially, which will protect your body.
It's so
Which
true.
will
I'm
yes.
so glad that you understand that because every day I keep reading and listening and hearing. It's so depressing in the US. I mean, we could talk all day about that alone, but just the way people eat, and a lot of it isn't even their fault. I mean, I grew up because I wasn't, before I went to college and was educated on it, I literally grew up on fast food and candy. That was what I ate all day because my parents didn't know any better. And once I became a researcher, it just scared me straight. And I have just been like, whoa. And you see such a difference. I mean, I feel like my brain functions. I probably look younger than I did when I was at that age. All the things that we're talking about has so much to do with what you eat and what you move. And the beauty of it is like that doesn't even cost anything. It's not really that much more expensive to eat healthy. And a lot of people say that, but it's not. With the exception, if you're in a food desert, yeah, the only thing around is probably McDonald's and liquor stores and convenience stores. I'm talking in the US specifically. I don't think it's that way in Europe, but I mean, that is the exception. But I mean, for the average person, it's actually not that much, it's not more expensive to eat healthy. And it's just so important.
I'm glad you said that. It's you can cook an organic meal in the UK, and my wife is very good at it. So under £10 for 4 people,
Yep.
so you
Yep.
actually could do these kind of things.
Yep.
But again, it takes care and interest, and I always say you better give more money for good food and give it for medicine. So I think it's
Yes.
it's a
So
choice,
true.
because it's well worth it. Um, but no, just thanks for bringing this up. It's so I mean, I look at for the basics. The basics are clean water. I do really pay attention to that. Clean food, which is what
Yep.
you're talking about. Clean air. I mean, the
Hmm.
simple. These are the basics. And then if you have clean thought, which is very much how you
It's,
guard what you
yeah.
consume, it's just these are the basics. If you start with the basics, I think it's things will start to come, and it's a multiplier effect, because it doesn't happen overnight. It just builds up all the time, and then it is just otherwise it's difficult when you operate at the level we do. You are hired to give. You come not to get. So you have to be more resourceful. Otherwise, and you're right. You gotta just take a good care of. It's not easy to do all in balance, as you know, when you have a family, when you have a business, when you have a lot of things to do. But if just coming to a final question here, and really appreciate the fire chat that we've been having with you. What if you were actually one of my favorite questions? If you had no limits and had limited resources, what is one thing you would like to change to make the world more caring, and really bring more hopeful, positive future?
Wow, that is a really good question. Um, this is hard because a lot of my work in psychology tells me, and again, in change management and behavior change, that we can't really change other people. That's the joke that I've learned over all the years, is that I can't actually make someone else change. But what I have learned is that I can do my very best, keep my side of the street clean, take care of myself, focus on how I'm being to others and how I'm interacting with them by filling my cup first. I can focus on my sphere, and then on top of that, live as unapologetically and aligned with like who I am as a person. And then all that it exudes out, right? Like it comes out. And I feel like that is a really good way to role model what you want to see more of in the world. So that's personally how I address that. I actually just try to be the best version of myself that I can be. And hopefully others find that helpful. If they do, great. If they don't, guess what, it's not aligned, but essentially just, I guess, just living it every day. A short answer would be just to live it every single day.
Thank you so much for spending the time today. It's been an absolute blessing to have you. Final question for you personally. If any one of our audience wants to get in touch for the purposes of maybe advising them on their culture, or really want some advice or consultancy, what is the best way to reach out to you?
I would say LinkedIn is really good. I love having conversations with people out there. I've also got my website is tonillemiller.com. You can connect out there. And then my company is EXT, and the website for that is experienceandtransformation.com. So I'd love to connect with folks.
Wonderful. Well, blessings to you, your family, your work, and your team. And thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for being a leader who cares.
Thank you so much for having me.